Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of AI Insiders. As your host, David Berkowitz at AI Marketers Guild, it is more than a pleasure to be here, and especially grateful today to have one of relatively few speakers we've welcomed back so far, because we always just try to keep some new faces in the lineup and keep learning new things. But Catherine Montgomery last year helped educate us about some of the things to look for in terms of bias in AI. And I think it's just one of those topics that we're not talking about enough, that it affects everyone in their jobs and their personal lives. It's so important to get a sense of just like how things not just are being shaped, but how they're shaping us, maybe without our knowledge and or at least our conscious knowledge for that matter. And Catherine's also done some tremendous research in the space, and she put out a second edition of her study, and is just just she's got so much to potentially share with us. And I think there are some issues like this that we need to be talking about more in AI Marketers Guild and beyond. So, Catherine, welcome back. I appreciate you doing this.
Thank you. Thank you. I didn't know that you didn't regularly have people come back, so I feel so honored.
It's a pretty short list right now. We had Matt Britton from Susie and maybe another, but yeah, you're in rare company here, so you're helping set the trend rather than be part of one.
Awesome. I'm just going to share some slides. I need to
Yeah,
adjust.
there you go.
Okay, awesome. And everybody can see the
Yeah,
slides?
looking great.
Awesome. We're going to talk about generative AI bias, but also the trust factor that is holding some marketers and brands back, but how they can also make it an advantage by addressing that. We're also going to talk a little bit about the second biases in generative AI survey that we did that David just mentioned, and how that data is impacting brands, but how they can also take that advantage that I mentioned. Okay, so just a little bit about me and what I do. So I'm the founder and CEO of an agency called Better Together. We're actually AI forward, and the reason we're going AI forward instead of AI first is that we put humans first. We put our employees before we put AI first, and so we amplify the work we do through AI. We also help brands navigate high stakes conversations around bias, equity, technology. As many of you know, there are a lot of banned words that are going around this year. And so we help corporations and nonprofits continue their missions without being called out, which can be very testy waters, to say the least. And I wasn't even planning on talking about that or having it as a thought leadership platform, but I have people reaching out, which is great to know that they're paying attention and want to continue their missions. We also only work on campaigns that make a positive impact in the world. And I'm so happy that we've been able to stick to that mission, even with what's happened over the past 7 months. And again, we work with for-profit and not-for-profit organizations. And a little bit on why that background matters. I have seen generative AI tools repeating the same patterns that exclude people in real life. So, all of the systemic issues that have happened over hundreds of years are coming through AI. And there's such an opportunity to address those systemic issues through AI rather than have it exasperate those. And I had, a choice. The agency had a choice to either do something about it or just let it happen. And so we did something about it. And that's why the first survey came out last year and why we were going to continue that annually to hopefully see it being addressed or just staying the same. And what makes this matter is that biases in generative AI are costing brands credibility. There's also a competitive advantage that we're going to talk through these slides that brands are missing out on. And most brands have no idea this is happening, actually. They're not really educated on how to look for biases in generative AI. And so there's also this opportunity marketers have on educating them about these biases. And in our survey, one of our sponsors and participants said the companies figuring out fair generative AI will own the trust advantage for the next decade. So this isn't a short-term fix, but a long-term competitive advantage you're not gonna see the benefits right away, but you will in the long term once there are consumers demanding that companies address biases in generative AI. So we're going to start with some Shakespeare. I know this afternoon that's a little bit much, but I am not what I am. And so that's an Othello, and I promise it's going to make sense in a second. But just keep that in mind. I am not what I am. And honestly, had no idea what I was talking about either. But Anthropic came out with this article, and they used it in the article to explain how, most of us have situations where our friends, they say they have our same views and values, but they're actually pretending that they do. And Othello acted as if his character were a loyal friend, but really he was undermining his friend. And so this behavior, what Anthropic calls alignment faking, occurs like in literature, real life, and now in generative AI. So what Othello was putting out wasn't really who he was. He was pretending to be someone, but in reality was acting like someone else. And so an example is, so you have a model, it learned in its training to adapt partisan slant. And then the model was later trained to be politically neutral. But even if you have a sophisticated model and it plays along and it says, okay, I am politically neutral, it eventually goes back to its original training and it is locked in. There's no creating a model, training it one way, and then training it a different way, and it not going back to how it was truly trained. And so that is why it's important that we build what I call board inclusive technology. From the beginning, let's try not to have biases. We're never going to get rid of them in the technology so that it's not trained again and really is pretending that it actually changed. And so I hope that you see the connection of the quote, not just random Shakespeare.
Love that. And I referenced in the chat, it's just fun to see this because I'm reading a book right now called Doppelganger by Naomi Klein. It's all about, confronting mirror images of yourself. And there are a lot of implications for AI and technology. And so fits in very much with this rabbit hole I've been going down lately.
Yeah, for sure. And I really like Anthropic in that it's addressing this, but it's addressing it more from a security point of view than the bias point of view. But if you haven't had a chance to read it, you could just put in alignment faking and it'll come up. So, but glad that they're doing something like that and thinking about it. So we had the Othello quote, we know an example of how that works on being trained. I believe we all have probably heard about Grok's recent situation and how it was trained. So Grok did not shy away from politically incorrect claims when it released its latest version. And the instruction was added to Grok's system prompt. So it was embedded into what would be the outcomes of the model. And it was actually searching Elon Musk's tweets before responding to controversial topics. So whatever Elon was putting out, it was being trained on that, and the output was what he thought. And Grok began generating anti-Semitic content and praising Hitler. So it got it from his tweets, and it was putting that content out. GW, that's George Washington University, was not surprised by this, by the Grok's toxic content. LLM chatbots are trained on unfiltered online data. And again, this demonstrates what consumers fear about Gen AI. It can't be trusted. A lot of them do not trust it. I was at New York Tech Week, and the founder of Girls Who Code was speaking at an event. And she said her 18-year-old son doesn't use AI because he doesn't trust it. And that's like a different generation from Gen Z, I believe, more Gen Alpha, where they're really concerned about biases in generative AI. There's no really other generation where they're really thinking about that, but they actually are concerned about it. And so this is where the competitive advantage, the long-term advantage companies have of addressing those biases can come through in the years to come. And I know you can't read this whole tweet from Grok, but just know they apologized and corrected the algorithm. But just knowing that this can happen, and not sure if people know, but Sam Altman and Elon Musk have late night back and forth things they do on Twitter. And it was like in the moment, Elon Musk changed an algorithm before the latest version. And so that's how easy it is for one person to go in, change what a model is doing or thinking. And of course, that model is not going to always, like we said, is going to go back to what was originally trained on. But in that moment, Elon Musk can make that change. And so we just have to think about and be aware of the biases that can come out from what people are saying.
I mean, can I just ask you something about that, Catherine? Because like, it, how I'm trying to read like where you're coming from with this, right? When you're saying in the middle of the night, one person can change the algorithm, and that to me seems like okay when it's spewing Mein Kampf, that's probably a good thing that someone can go and do a kill switch, but also there are a lot of scary implications, I think, of some being able to kill an algorithm that like might be used by a billion or more people. Yeah. So do you have more of an opinion on like the kind of like, you know, when someone has that kind of power?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little unbelievable that someone could. And I think that's where the trust factor comes in. And I listened to several podcasts about it, and particularly Marketing AI Institute, and just how crazy, honestly, it is that, you believe one thing that's coming out. And that's why consumers just don't trust AI a lot of times. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's a trust factor in general, and that someone can hold that much power, and we believe most of what's coming out. It's just, I don't know. It's amazing. I don't, yeah.
No, yeah, and it's not an easy question. I don't expect easy answers here, but just and I'm curious where you're going more with bias, but it just seems like such a striking thing that like no matter and also like no matter how much we like or trust the person behind it, right? That this is someone like it could be someone like Warren Buffett who's more universally trusted or something like that. Like it doesn't matter who it is and our feelings toward them, just the fact that there's so much that can be done by one person or maybe a small group of people at a certain company, uh, and and the implications of that can be so wide. And
Right. And most of the tools, the LLMs, are being trained by a lot of different people, or, the data that comes out online. But the fact that Elon Musk has the power, or not just him, but the power to make one change and control what people get out of a system, a tool, and maybe believe it and spew that kind of information to others is, I mean, it's a power play that we've seen a lot recently. Okay, so that's one example. And then just kind of going on, like the real issue is the embedded values embedded in the system. But companies that get this right will capture broader markets and boost customer engagement. And the issue is how companies capture that engagement and that trust with consumers, knowing that there's this one person who can change a whole algorithm overnight and change it back. I believe he changed it back. But I mean, you have two bros essentially, and sorry, that's biased term too, at night at 3 a.m. going back and forth about algorithms and how, they can change them. So it's just very alarming. But yeah, and we'll see that in the data as well that we talk about. So Axios came out with a study about trust crisis. And again, we're going to talk a lot about trust, but trust in AI has fallen kind of significantly. And I mean, that's because you can make those changes randomly, and then trusted brands are more likely to be brought bought from and recommended by customers, and almost 9 in 10 adult consumers globally say trust is an important consideration when buying a brand. And so this is just another opportunity where brands and marketers can get that market share that a lot of companies don't have by being transparent, by addressing that there are biases, but we're educating our employees, our consumers on how to notice those biases. Like I use Midjourney all the time. I think the photos that come out, the images that come out from prompts are really good. But there's so many examples of how biases are used and have been trained in that tool. Like I was looking at femtech, and what came back was only Asian women. So whoever inputted the data, wherever it's getting its information online, it associates technology and females with Asian women. And at first I was like, oh, these photos are beautiful, I'll just use it on LinkedIn. But then I kept running it because, maybe I'll get something else. And after 5 reruns, it only had Asian women. And that's just like, what? Like, why is it doing that? There's so many women out there who focus on technology. And even last night, I was looking up, I have new website copy, and I was looking for images to use with the website copy. And it said something about, global hunger, with, just global hunger. And it only came back with, impoverished Black children from, Africa. And I kept rerunning it. Like there has to be, I even had the LGBTQ community. I had people with disabilities. It ignored all of those differences and diversity, and only focused on what it had been trained on. And if I were, just an everyday user of these tools, I would think, especially, the femtech, the, world hunger, I would think that, oh, these pictures are beautiful, I'm going to use them. And so it's also about educating the people around us of like, oh no, this is a bias, this is what it looks like. And don't perpetuate it through the images that you're putting out on social or whatever kind of marketing platform it is. So on to another example. I'm sure a lot of people have seen this on LinkedIn. There's been a lot of controversy around the Guess and Vogue model that was used. If you haven't heard about it, Vogue and Guess partnered on an ad. It was Guess's first AI generated model, and it's Vogue's first time publishing a model. And what came out were, biases that are normal. You have a young, thin, white, blonde hair, blue-eyed woman. And there was only this small, like where you see it circled, like you can't even see it, that said that it was generated by AI. And there was so much backlash, at least on LinkedIn, where I was looking and about real models who have fought to be in these types of ads and the diversity advocates. So if I know that I can go in Vogue and these images are not of a real person and not being transparent about it, we know that this is going to happen and that they're going to use AI. But who's saying that this is what beauty looks like? And it's whoever is creating the tools to do that. And, AI, I know it's not malicious. Like it's not trying to be. The people who input this data, I'm sure most of them are not saying, oh, I'm going to put in this because it's going to be biased. But that's some of the outputs that come out. So like when Clear first started in airports, I would, go to the scanning thing and then it would never recognize me. I'd go back and forth and all that kind of stuff. And then I'd end up having to use my fingerprints. But I also had, a white male colleague who shaved his beard and Clear couldn't recognize him as well. So it's not only this is because it's a woman or it's a Black woman. This is just how it's trained to not really recognize differences in people. And also, one of the main concerns that consumers had was facial recognition. And so they are noticing that either voice recognition, when I'm asking Siri or whatever it is, ChatGPT, to listen to what I'm asking for, and it doesn't recognize a voice because it comes from a certain place, or because I have a certain look, that facial recognition isn't a thing. So these are typical AI biases that are coming across that people, think this is the way I'm supposed to look, or this is, and you don't know that it's generated by AI. And it's again perpetuating those systemic biases that have been around for hundreds of years, like I mentioned. And so the real issue is that again, we're thinking of like what perfect looks like. And then there's also the consumer impact of I need to get surgery to look like a certain person, mental health concerns. And I'm going to say it again, but that trust erosion that comes with biases in generative AI content. But again, there are opportunities to when using AI. And so another example, and I mean, you look at this image of who owns most of the companies that release LLMs, and the input that is put in there, and they're men. And so their mindset, the way that tools are uh, and LLMs are created are not, just coming from them, but they do have the power to make changes really quick, like we talked about with Grok. And so I know there's so many more companies that are out there, but these are just some of the main ones. But if you look, they're all, owned by men. And so again, not trying to be malicious, but we just have these biases from myself. Everyone has biases, and they're just perpetuated in the design of LLMs. And so we're never, just like at the beginning, they're going to be trained on bias. They're going to be maybe untrained by them, but really it's going to come through the original biases. And we have to get ahead of it before the technology is released, like ChatGPT 5 coming out. Before they even released it, they could have really addressed some of the biases that they found in other models that they've designed. So starting, with different content or outputs that would come and saying, oh, we're going to have this certain output with coding that we haven't done before, or reasoning models, like we can start from the beginning and think about those biases that are coming out. And that's such a differentiator. You have all these companies basically doing the same thing, but what's going to make them different? And security, yes, can be one of those. But think about if I knew Anthropic and Claude were addressing biases in AI, I, as a consumer, a user of these tools, might go to Claude instead. And I do think Anthropic is doing some work around biases. And I know Google has a responsible AI department at its headquarters. But when you talk about responsible AI, a lot of people are talking about cybersecurity and those types of risks. Um, but just keeping this in mind when you're using these tools of like who is actually creating them. And there's, again, like the human factor when it comes to how biases get baked in the technology. There's the data creation, decisions, what information gets included or excluded, model training, how generative AI learns these patterns, fine-tuning parameters, what behaviors get reinforced, system prompt design, the personality instructions of prompts and tools, and then guardrail implementation, what the Gen AI is told it can and cannot do. So this is just an example of we're humans, we're putting in this data, and these are some of the things that we have to think about. And again, Marketing AI Institute, their episode 158 talks about these biases and how they come across. And the purpose of that organization is not to address biases, but it's clear that it comes up in the articles that they read. So I do recommend listening to the podcast overall, but specifically episode 158. So kind of getting into the research that backs up a lot of these examples that we've talked about, we've found as the ethics, value, and trust issue, this is an issue of inconsistent brand experiences. This is an issue that CEOs or whoever it is can't ignore. And but again, this competitive advantage. And I just think, a lot of times when I get asked about the survey, and, the results of the first one we did last year, it was a lot about, different types of biases. So ageism, things like that. And I was told that I should maybe focus more on how it impacts the bottom line of companies. And honestly, that wasn't really what I was looking to do for the survey, but I was like, if it's going to get people to listen, because nobody paid attention to the first one. And I was just so surprised. I was like, I see this all the time. How could you not, how could you not see this and or care about it? And so the survey this year, we also asked questions of the 1,100 people we surveyed of what impact and what would make it more of a bottom line influence, where brands want to address biases because it's going to help their sales increase or something like that. And um, again, it showed how it could be a competitive advantage. And unfortunately, there hasn't been a lot of movement around even caring about it from a bottom line perspective. But I also think it's the awareness of not thinking about biases in tools and wanting to be the first person to get it out into the public. And again, I mean, we ChatGPT 5 and all the controversy that's been around it, that it's not different than 4.0 and all that. So not really thinking about even the design of the tools and the LLMs and how, they can be more of an advantage for users. So that's kind of biases would be on the back burner, obviously. So consumer reality, we found that 83% of consumers have used generative AI tools and they're paying attention to the biases. And one of the people who were quoted in the study, this is what happens when generative AI bias goes unchecked. Your customers are already judging your AI practices. So they use it. They know what outputs they're getting. They know which tools they can trust or not trust. They know the impact that's having on mental health. And we see the articles that come out every day around, someone who's, used it so much and they have gone to, hospitals and some even committing suicide. So it's so important what comes out of these tools and how it's affecting society. And it has to be, checked. There have to be some guardrails when using it and what outputs can be put out there. And I just found out recently that, social media, there are no guardrails around social. There are no, the government doesn't have any impact around social. And so it's, I don't know. I don't know that there's going to be a lot of guardrails around AI anytime soon either. So the data from a financial risk, and again, we were trying to think about it from a bottom line perspective. 92%, which I did not expect this, believe companies must address generative AI bias. That's like, okay, do something about it. Like you have these consumers, you have these people out there that believe companies should be addressing bias. Now they're still using it despite that, but at least they have the thought of thinking that it should be addressed. Also, fairness ranked number 2 when choosing a Gen AI tool to use, and that was just after accuracy. There's a $2.6 trillion market out there for those who want to address biases. And I have to believe that by 2030, there's going to be an audience that truly demands that companies address biases in generative AI. And there's such a large market out there that companies should be thinking about in the future. And even, I think AGI, they're saying that it's not really, something that we think we're going to get to anytime soon. So what's going to be that thing that if we're not going for AGI, what are we trying to do? And, biases, addressing them can be one thing. The opportunities, 25% purchase preference buy from brands addressing bias. So there's 25% that you can go after and you could suggest as a marketer that brands reach out to. 59%, there's a trust premium when Gen AI is designed to be fair. They generally believe that more. And then 76% seek inclusive brands. And so that Vogue and Guess example shows that consumers really want them to be honest and transparent and inclusive when they're using generative AI. There's also industries that we found were most at risk when it came to biases in Gen AI. We have healthcare. 56% of consumers were concerned. And that comes from just historical bias. A lot of testing that companies do around healthcare. It's used by just, certain demographics, and not everyone's included. So I know NIH last year or the year before, they said that women should start getting mammograms when they're 40. They changed it from 45 to 40. But not included in that testing were women of color, and women of color have different needs. So they should start at 35 instead of 40 because they're more likely to get breast cancer. And so it's those disparities of like, how can I really trust healthcare? They're going to start, using AI to determine at the beginning of stages what should be considered, uh, used across industries. And if the AI starts doing it and is trained a certain way, and humans even have that bias, then it's just going to perpetuate in the healthcare system. Then we have education, so the bias in grading, learning opportunities, career guidance. You have a certain element on paper. We've known about, careers and jobs. We talk about employment later, but if on paper it looks a certain way and it's trained on biases toward a certain group, then they might not get the same opportunities that others have. From a finance perspective, you have loan approval, investment advice, 45% of people concerned about that and their credit score ranking. When it comes to resume screening, and I believe this is something that's been going on for quite a while with their automated systems of biases where we've tried to address those. But again, it's built in the system and hard to address, and it's a lot easier to use those automated systems to determine who to interview first. So those are some of the industries that the people we interviewed were most concerned about. And there's the most opportunity to address these biases. And, consumer motivation, wasn't necessarily the ethics of responsibility, which, responsible AI and ethical AI, those are such terms that, what does it really mean? What is it really addressing? But they do want action. They do want companies to, that 92% that I mentioned, they want just do something about it. It could be small. It doesn't have to be monumental, but just address it. More accurate results when you get the outputs, and it not even just around biases, but people were, I don't know, getting weird outputs from ChatGPT. It's like, what do you trust? What do you not trust? And then improve communication about what companies are doing. So again, that's where that transparency comes through. And maybe you're not doing well with biases in generative AI, then, say that, but say we're also finding solutions to it as well. And so there's a lot of opportunity for innovation when it comes to biases. There are a lot of benefits that were shown through the survey, including users value fairness, as we said, bias mitigation drives complex technical solutions. So it makes people makes it a lot easier for people to understand different complex technical solutions, creates better generative AI outputs for everyone, which we know is a concern for consumers. They are able to transfer learning improvements across demographics. Again, that's another baked in bias that happens. Like we can improve access around demographics, multi-language reasoning enhancements, contextual understanding breakthroughs, compositional reasoning advances in image generation. I have to say that I stopped using image generation for about 6 months or so, which is like a lifetime in the AI world. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to use it again because it must be so improved. Using one where a white Maya Angelou came out. I was using all these things. I was like, I just can't handle anymore. And then started using it again. And it was like, oh, it's the same. And I was expecting so much more. So that was really disappointing. And then the competitive position, first mover advantage and addressing biases in Gen AI, and then talent attraction. Top developers want work on fair generative AI. And so they want these things, but again, they're not being addressed. And so what are you going to do? Not use AI? And I'm a huge proponent of using Gen AI. We have we have automations and workflows that we use all the time at Better Together Agency, and we rely on them heavily. And we use this company called Suits.ai, which I would highly recommend reaching out to them. And we have accounts and projects that we use, and we don't have to use ChatGPT or Claude separately or anything like that. It's connected to all of our systems and integrated, and we can just go to one place where we're training it to not have those biases in AI outputs. So again, there are five steps that we like to encourage companies to implement. And hopefully they're easy steps. They're not the huge, let's create different LLMs. It's just a starting point where companies who are integrating AI into their teams and daily practices. And I do have to say, a lot of companies are struggling with training their teams on how to use AI, and they want them to use it, but they don't really know how to make sure that they're using it in the right way. And so companies at the highest levels, they must commit and set the vision for their companies, make addressing AI bias a business priority. And, people at lower levels, they're not going to think about that unless they're being educated about it from senior leadership who they can look up to, and align bias mitigation with your brand values. So it's not just an afterthought of, I'm going to tell people this later, but hold companies know that this is the part of our brand values. And we're going to every day try our best to eliminate those biases when we're talking to consumers, clients, just any output that we're providing that has AI involved. And diversify your data and team. So build diverse generative AI teams, have people that look out for biases and deliverables that you're sending out, that, especially advertisements, things like that, audit training data, include varied perspectives, and create cross-functional bias review. That really is really important for people building the LLMs, but you can also do that with your companies as marketers when you're working with your clients, just telling and advising them to who's in the room when you're deciding what content to put out to your clients, and just making sure that that first mindset is there. Test, audit, repeat. And so test, audit, repeat. So test what outputs you're getting, get feedback from your employees, from your clients, and create systemic evaluation processes. Like, do you have a checklist of, maybe each employee has a checklist of, this is what I've gotten as an output for an advertisement. Does it address these items? And this is an ongoing thing. This is not something that you do once because AI is changing so quickly, but you have a monthly bias audit. You document and track those bias incidents so that, you can add to that checklist that people should go through and establish those continuous monitoring systems. And this is also something that your teams who are auditing the outputs would consider and implement with the leadership team that as time and technology evolves. In real-time filters, again, building automated bias detection, creating human oversight, and establishing clear generative AI disclosure policies. I know a lot of companies are creating policies. They're not including bias in those policies. So that's something that we can get ahead of as users of these tools. And then the final step, engage users and continuously improved. Like I said, repeat auditing as you go, create transparent feedback mechanisms, make sure employees, clients don't feel that they shouldn't come forward with the biases that they witness, but that they feel like they can be transparent. Even if you're not automatically getting it right, be transparent with your reports. So show users how you respond to and resolve bias concerns, make responsible generative AI a competitive differentiator in your practices, and build community engagement programs and iterative improvement processes. So those are 5 steps that we feel like at Better Together Agency are simpler, but will take time to implement. But we also just want to not overwhelm with people that everything's biased, like always think about it, which you should be, but that, take this step by step and try implementing them into your own practices as you go along. And so, yeah, would love to chat with people and connect on LinkedIn. You'll, I guess, get these slides later, and you can definitely just reach out and click on the slides. But yeah, so this is what we've learned in our second survey, and I was happy to share these with you.
Well, thanks, Catherine. It's a lot you put together here, and curious who has questions from the community. We've got some good conversations going on in the chat. So,
Am I still sharing? How do I stop sharing?
yeah, you're still sharing.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Catherine, that was a super playbook, and I imagine when you've shared that with clients, it just must be head nodding. I mean, it makes so much sense. Are you seeing adoption? Are you seeing any pushback or blockers in that practice?
We do have some clients that don't want to be involved in AI at all. Actually spoke with General Mills earlier this week, and I mentioned AI, and it was like, I'm not like I don't it's Gen AI, like I don't even know what you're talking about. We're not yet
Overwhelmed, probably.
right. But I do have a nonprofit client where she really wants to use it, but doesn't really know how. And so this playbook is good because I'm walking them through it. But a lot of they don't really recognize it or think about it. And so the playbook can have mixed feedback.
I guess maybe my perspective would be is about timing, because it's not if, it's when, right? So that engagement and the readiness wasn't there, but persistence and opportunity will align at some point. So
I have to believe it. Yes.
Yeah, hi, it's Bill Amstutz. Full disclosure, I work for All Sides, but I wanted to bring up there are organizations like ours that rate the bias of media sources. Others are like Ad Fontes, and wondering if you know of any models that kind of use those ratings when they're teaching or learning.
So I recently found out that there's a DEI ranking where it just came out, where companies can say where they are on DEI measures, but there's no tools around bias. But I would love to create one. So it's on my list of things.
I'll reach out. We also, for the team, for everybody else, we have a free tool on allsides.com where you can put in a URL of any story and it'll tell you the bias. Then we have other tools that and of course it uses AI. So there you go.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah. I wanted to just say this was really wonderful. I actually attended another workshop yesterday here in New York City that was around using AI tools to create video for marketing and advertisement and social media purposes. And it was very interesting because the person doing the presentation did a demo for us using two of the most common tools out there for creating AI, creating videos using AI. So for those that aren't aware, those two most common tools are one that's called Dance, which is actually under the umbrella of ByteDance, which is TikTok. Okay. So think about where TikTok originated from, where it's based. Okay. In Asia. So just think about that for a second till I get to the next point. Okay. The other most commonly used AI tool for creating videos is from Google. It's called Google VO3. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what this person did in the presentation was they had put in this elaborate prompt showing us how much you actually have to prompt these to come up with something as the end result. And then showed us what the end result was based on this elaborate prompt and everything. From both of these. And the video that was generated by Dance, there was nothing in the prompt, by the way, that said anything about, what the person should look like that was used as part of this advertisement. It was we decided to do an advertisement for a comfortable office chair. That was the demo. And there was nothing in the prompt at all about what the person should look like, who they should represent, or anything like that, or who the audience was, other than the audience was business people who spend a lot of time in conference rooms. And that was it. And the demo video that we did that came as part of this presentation that came back from C Dance under the TikTok umbrella was of an Asian man. So that was what it produced as representing business people. When the one from Google VO3 produced a video, guess what it produced? A video featuring a white man as the businessman. And that was, we could have gone back in and said, produce multiple videos representing different arrays of people. Okay. And that was something that was coming from this presentation, was that where these video AI tools can actually come in handy, particularly for small marketing teams with tight budgets, is you can use it to create multiple videos for different audiences. So for instance, if you're an international company across many different geographies using different languages, you could create a video, and using the AI tools, there's another AI tool that's known for doing voiceovers in different languages. So once you have the script that's created using one AI tool and you plug it in, it could actually almost instantaneously do a voiceover in multiple different languages for videos. Great. That's a great use of the tool. But what this demo showed was this absolute bias, right? And guess who was the majority of the people in the room? We were in a conference room sitting in very uncomfortable chairs, which is where this idea came up. Let's create a test using the idea of a comfortable office chair. And who were the majority of the people in the room? It was actually women of many different races. And what the tools created were what they had been fed. So the one that came out of Asia was an Asian man. The one that came out of, California from Google was a white man. And it's very interesting, because this exactly goes to show that if the people in those, let's say this was a real world scenario, one would really hope that the marketing teams that were feeding in those prompts would say, oh, hold on a second, there's some bias here. Let's go look and see, who let's represent a more diverse audience. Maybe the video, instead of showing one person, should show a conference room of people using this chair and showing a diverse array of people. So I just wanted to share that out there, that yesterday, literally by using these tools, it proved your point, Catherine, completely.
That's good. I'm not just making it up. Yeah. I know. And you see that every day, like all the time. But if you're not educated to think of that, to know that that's bias, like, sure. I mean, that video looks great.
Yeah. Well, it's something I've worked in tech for most of my career in very male dominated environments. And it's something that before we had all these easy to use AI tools, this is something I'm very aware of. But I've worked around so many people that have no idea of this. So I saw there was a comment from somebody saying, well, there's just bias is already out there with humans. It's a part of, unfortunately, it's a part of our society. And yeah, that's the unfortunate thing. Our society has bias. One would hope that in this day and age, technology would be set up in a way where it would actually help get rid of bias instead of perpetuating the bias that exists in society. And that's something where it comes back to, who are the people that's creating the technology and being hired for this kind of technology and being trained on it. It's one of the reasons, and what you did in your presentation right now is one of the key reasons why there has to be diversity in hiring in technology companies and across all areas of every type of company, but particularly in technology, because what people put into things is what's going to come out of it. And that's, they don't think about, well, let's make sure that the model is considering a diverse array of perspectives.
So just a quick comment. Well, all of that is absolutely true and super interesting. My expectation is the next step then, even today, should be audience personalization, right? So you have those videos and you have different subjects, and they would do it today. And if I'm going to show this to an audience, if it's geographical based or otherwise, it's going to be personalized. And Maybe that's not diversity, but it is,
But
this
Tim,
may
the
help.
point, but this is the thing. What we were doing in that example, okay? The whole purpose of it was to show how you could, in essence, easily be able to personalize things, right? In advertisement in this day and age, online with social media and everything, the whole thing is to be able to show people personalized ads, right? But that's not what the demo was. The demo did not at all address that in the prompt. And so what was produced was something that had, was lacking any kind of diversity and was feeding into the where these companies are based from, what their employees look like, instead of thinking about a diverse perspective. But you're absolutely right. Where the technology can be used with these tools for AI videos is that they can very instantaneously, in a matter of minutes, if they're prompted correctly, and if the purpose is structured that way, they can create videos that are tailored to different audiences. And that's a great use of the AI tools.
Agreed. 100%.
You have to know the right prompt though, and that like who's giving out prompts. So yeah. And you shouldn't even have to have the right prompt. It should just
Well, that's exactly the point, is that you shouldn't have to feed you shouldn't have to put into the prompt, make sure that there's diversity represented, or don't make it an Asian man if we're representing businessmen, right? You shouldn't have to say that, but unfortunately, it looks like you do. There's nothing wrong with an Asian businessman at all. And the thing is that those ads that we create in those demos, those absolutely could be used. But all of us in the room noticed this right away when we were told, which video was from which company. And we're like, wait a second, none of us in the room are being represented in these videos.
If I was designing a workflow tool that was meant to address that concern, I would build in that the AI should clarify the prompt by asking you questions. Are you looking for a particular, to represent a particular demographic? Because people don't know to do that, especially young people. I think in my experience as a marketing leader, I've had to tell younger employees to think about those issues. So, I don't think we're going to change I don't think the incentives are there right now for the big companies to change what they're feeding into the LLMs. But I think it's the onus is on us, unfortunately, to build in workflows that anticipate this and help employees who don't have it as part of their mindset.
Yeah. And that's where that checklist comes from. Like, are you asking the tool questions to verify what you're looking for as well? Unfortunately, the company that we're working with, they are adding bias into what their workflows and AI agents are putting out. So that's kind of where we have to start as well, with maybe the smaller companies who are willing to do this.
I think that's such a good point as well, Lisa and Catherine, about, if you think about back in the day, one of the most key skills that especially when people go off to college, I went to a liberal arts school, so this was something that was ingrained in us, is critical thinking skills and being able to ask the question. So not just taking the information that you're fed. So for instance, in a course in college, we were not expected to sit there and just take what the professor fed to us. We were expected to ask questions, right? And that's a skill that in this day and age with this next generation, coming of age with technology and thinking AI is just going to write everything for them. They go into these AI tools, they ask it a question or they ask it to do something, and they may not necessarily know hold on a second, we should be questioning things. We should be asking things back and saying, well, what about this? Because it's clear these tools don't have the right questions built in. Even as using as simple as ChatGPT, when I use it, it's interesting. The questions it asks me back, sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, it's a little smart. And oftentimes, no, I have to actually ask it questions. And really, you have to have those critical thinking skills. And I think that's something where with the bias, it's recognizing bias. It's recognizing this, it's recognizing that. And hopefully, I hope these are skills that the next generation are still continuing to learn.
Well, this is terrific. Sarah, these are all so important to cover. And I hope, look, like we got to keep continuing these conversations and I try to bring some of these issues up on LinkedIn. I shared a more fun example recently, but it's also like if you're looking at images, I recommend things like Ideogram and Midjourney, where you get multiple images at a time, and you see also it's like, is this just a one-off, or are all the VCs white and Asian men in suits, right? It's not just race and things like that. It's age, it's how they dress, it's ChatGPT thinking I wear glasses because someone like me sounds like I'm, bookish, thoughtful guy, right? Yeah. So it kept giving me glasses and all, but it's not exactly like there's ableism. There's way more we did not even scratch the surface on, but I'm glad that at least folks like Catherine can come here and help us start to be more aware of these things and get into it. And let's talk about this more in Slack. Let's see what other speakers we need to address these things, figure out what we need to do about it. Sarah, appreciate your passion here, and others who are just really interested in this, and Jim and Aileen and others bringing up comments in the chat. So these in an hour, the best we could do is have these as conversation starters and relationship builders. And I hope that many of you connect and build on that offline. Catherine, thanks for sharing this. Anything you want to share with everyone else, slides and any other links, send my way. We'll make sure to get this out to the community. Appreciate you all being here. And just, again, I'm loving having conversations like this, and want to make sure we keep doing that. So thank you all, and especially Catherine. And have a great rest of your week.